Welcome to Tuesday Group. Happy Tuesday. It's the best day of the week in Ely, Minnesota, in part because we get to do this together here at the Grand Ely Lodge. My name's Lacey Squire. I manage Boundary Waters Connect, which is the organization that sponsors and hosts Tuesday Group. Um, we get together here every week at the Grand Ely Lodge to learn in community with our neighbors. Thank you to Randy Greiner, who's our Me New Elyites coordinator. Woo woo. It's no small task to be an investigative journalist, finding the new people in town and interacting with them. And so I am ever grateful to Randy. For now, allow me to give this microphone to Mr. Randy Greiner.
So first up is Chrissy Turk, a new Ely-ite. Come on up here.
Yeah.
I won't spoil any of it.
All right. Grab this from you and I will give it to you. Okay. Put it right there. Thank you very much.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, cool. My name is Chrissy Turk, and last week actually marked 1 full year that I've lived in Ely now year-round, so exciting. It's also marked 1 full year of living in the same state and working in the same state continuously since high school. So I've been doing a lot of moving around since graduating high school, and I grew up in South Florida, actually, in a suburb between Miami and Fort Lauderdale. And I kind of got my first introduction to a not so tropical environment, living in a not as warm place by going to college in Western North Carolina, up in the Blue Ridge Mountains there. And so when I was 18 years old was when I first saw real snow and got to experience real seasons. I went to college and intended to study wildlife biology, but then I found out that there was also, I could major in something called outdoor recreation management. So that sounded a bit more interesting to me. In my junior year of high school, discovered the sport of indoor rock climbing and also got more involved in scouting. So it was the combination of those two things that kind of propelled my interest in the outdoors. I wouldn't really consider my family growing up to be the most outdoorsy. And so, yeah, those two activities that I got into in high school kind of really opened my eyes to doing outdoor activities. But then when I was in college, I found out quickly that there was also lots of other fun things to do outdoors. I joined my school's ski and snowboard team and was on the rock climbing team. So it's kind of funny to be a kid coming from one of the flattest, least snowiest states to now compete in rock climbing and snowboard, and even could qualify for nationals 1 year. So that was pretty neat. I also learned how to be a ski and snowboard instructor for college credit. So that was kind of cool. I could go to the local mountain by my school a couple days a week and learn how to teach snowboarding. And that was, one of the highlights of my college experience. Another skill that I learned in college, an outdoor skill, was how to do canoe camping. And I learned that right up here in Minnesota. For my internship, my freshman year, I went to Northern Tier High Adventure for my internship experience and learned how to be a canoe guide for them. And so that was my first time in Minnesota. And I came up here not really having much of an idea what the Boundary Waters was like. And I definitely didn't know how to portage a canoe. But I learned that pretty fast and loved it so much that I came back every summer during college to take youth out and explore the Boundary Waters and the Quetico all summer long. And I even came back for 3 winters to be a winter camping guide for them and eventually a dog sledding guide for them. And so that's where I really learned how to actually survive in the cold. After I got my degree in outdoor recreation management, I also got some minors in wilderness medicine, business administration, and ski industry instruction and business. Some interesting ones there. I wanted to see some other areas of the country, so I lived for almost a year in New England, I worked at a wilderness expedition school as an outdoor educator in New Hampshire, and I told them that I had a lot of canoeing experience, so they said, great, we'll make you our whitewater canoeing instructor. And I said, okay, I'll see how that goes. And that was a lot of fun learning experience with some 8th graders and a bunch of boats coming down a moving water river. But that was, yeah, really, really awesome place to work. It was also based on a farm, so got to, learn about farming while I also was, taking kids in the outdoors. Through that same company, I got to guide trips in California and in Utah. And then I also lived in Montana for 2 years. I lived around the Flathead Valley, so right by Glacier National Park, and I worked as a ski and snowboard instructor over there. And I also worked as a kayaking guide on Flathead Lake, and I also mushed out in Montana at a dog sledding kennel there. So yeah, I went on plenty of my own non-work related adventures as well. After graduating college, me and some friends that I met working at the Scout base up here, we went on a almost 3-month-long canoe trip from Grand Portage to the Hudson Bay. So that's a really, awesome memory that we got to make together. Thanks. And then a little bit after that, I also got the chance to raft through the Grand Canyon for 25 days. So those are kind of 2 really cool trips that I've gotten to do. And so I learned my first summer in Minnesota that coming up here that I might get bit by the bug. And I'm not talking about the mosquito, but the kind of bug that makes you want to keep coming back to the Northwoods. And so out of all the places that I've got to live and work, I've found that the first place that I learned how to be an outdoor guide was kind of where I like to live and be the most. So that brought me back to Ely. And so 1 year ago, last January in 2025, I moved back up here with my boyfriend Hunter and our good friend Josh. And while we got our feet underneath us, we did some WOOFing, which stands for Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And so basically what it is, you volunteer on a farm in exchange for a room and board. So we did that over in Tower for about a month at a very welcoming farm while we found jobs and our own place to live. Once we got that all organized and settled, I got work at Boundary Waters Outfitters, and I work over there in the summer by Farm Lake. And in the winters, I work at Chili Dogs and guide dog sledding trips for them. And so it's been really fun, and we've been having a great winter so far. And so much to my mom's relief, I've finally decided to settle and be in the same place for a little bit. In the past 4 months, I bought a house and got a dog, and between that and work, I've been pretty busy. But in my free time, I like to go thrift shopping and train my dog, and I'm looking forward to doing some more cross-country skiing with her this winter and going to the Ely Film Festival. And in the spring, I hope to do some more gardening and learn about preserving my own food. And I also like to edit videos and share my outdoor adventures with friends and family that way. Yeah.
Where can we find them?
So my name is Chrissy Turk, and I post them on YouTube. Yeah, under my name, Chrissy Turk. Yeah.
Any questions?
So how old are you?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm 27 years old. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Do you go to Clemson?
Do I go to Clemson?
Yeah.
Oh, no. So the college I went to is called Lees McRae College, a very tiny private school out but in the Boone area of North Carolina by Appalachian State there. Yeah. So I really enjoy the small college experience. And so I kind of feel like living in Ely reminds me of going to that small college. There's always things going on, and you recognize people everywhere. And yeah, it's one of my favorite parts about Ely is just kind of the community. Yeah.
Do you work at Farm and Wilderness?
Farm and Wilderness in New Hampshire, in New England. The place I worked was called Croca Expeditions. Yeah. Yes.
I know that you said, like, this is, of all the places you've been, this place, you got the bug, but can you say a sentence more about, like, what it is?
Yeah. Getting to guide in other places really kind of made me realize how spoiled I was learning to guide first in the Boundary Waters, just the continuous nature of the wilderness and so much opportunities for just getting out there and getting out far away from people and just always there being new lakes to explore. In New England, there's lots of great wilderness activities to do, but you're constantly passing through towns and coordinating with camping on private land. And so that was something that I really experienced and got to learn just guiding other places. And then also I made a lot of really great friends working up here for all those summers, and some of them stuck around. So it was very easy to move back because I knew I was already had a community here as well. So that was a big part of it. Sure.
Do you have any entrepreneurial like ambitions that you're like working towards? Not that you need to, you've accomplished a lot. But...
I definitely feel an entrepreneurial spirit and have some ideas. I still do love rock climbing and would love to try and brainstorm some kind of idea to maybe bring more of that activity to Ely. Working at Boundary Waters Outfitters has been a really great thing for me because there's lots of opportunity to kind of, I feel like, grow and develop and help with management out there. And so I'm going to hopefully try and help bring more winter programming to them. So that would be a cool management role to step into. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I was thinking of the states, New North Carolina, New Hampshire, Minnesota, Utah, California, Arizona. Were those all road trips?
Those are a few of them. Yeah, I've done a couple more that I didn't mention as well, but yeah, correct. Go ahead. I got a dog from Contented Critters. So she's a rescue. She's a mixed dog, and she's a part Siberian Husky mixed with Australian cattle dog and some other breeds in there. So she's pretty fun. Hope she hasn't quite figured out the pulling part yet, but the skidoring and yeah, skiing together has been fun so far. Exactly. Yeah, I don't know if she wants to be a sled dog or a herding dog more.
We hope there's some put your roots on the waves.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yep.
So a smart man told me one time, you're better off to be lucky than smart. So a new Elyiite wandered in here, and he's interested in presenting. And a funny story, I scour Pam-a-Lot every week in the Echo looking for new Elyites. And then I'll cut their picture out and, read the blurb and then figure out a way to find them. So one night I was at Northern Grounds and a friend of mine was at the bar talking with this couple. And I walk up and Irene tells me, "Oh, Randy, I'd like you to meet." And I said, "The Klingermans," because I'd been following them in the Echo. And I think I shocked everybody by knowing their name. Anyway, so wonderful couple, Tom and Karen. Karen, want to come up, Tom? Interesting story.
Thank you. Trade that up. Can I give you this?
I don't know, what is it?
Well, it helps the Zoom crowd hear you better.
Okay, oh, sure.
May I?
Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen's disappointed she's
Oh,
here.
yeah. So yeah, my name's Tom Klingerman. We're a part-year resident. We bought a house over at 13th and Harvey Street about 14 years ago. And I'll explain later how we figured out to do that. But anyway, we were working on that part-time. We gutted it, rebuilt it from the inside out, just finished a new garage. It's super insulated. Yes, we have been here at 40 below, so we knew that what was going on. So anyway, now we moved up full-time in June. So now we're full-time residents forever and ever in Ely. Yeah, I've been in the, what are you doing at 3 o'clock in the paper 10 years ago, and now this year, and I feel like I'm a continuing story. So anyway, Tom Klingerman, I was born in Indiana, went to school. I love that comment about the Blue Ridge. I went to school in the Shenandoah Valley up in Lexington, Virginia, a place called VMI, Virginia Military. And after that, Uncle Sam owned me. So I went off and ended up spending 23 years in Uncle Sam's flying circus, blowing things up on command. Had a good time. Went down to Texas first, where I taught flying, learned to be an instructor. I can assure you, teaching people how to fly is much more scary than being shot at. So anyway, I was flight instructor, went from there, went out to Las Vegas, flew fighter, got into a fighter assignment and flew fighters for the rest of my time. Anyway, overlapped that I got to the point after about 10 years, you can only take so much military. I really loved flying, got tired of the military, decided it was time to get out, got a job in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, for the world's largest avionics, electronics for aircraft manufacturer called Collins Radio. So I worked for Rockwell Collins for 30 years, overlapped that with my 23 in the Air Force. So while we're doing that, we're sitting there and we're never going to have children. Kids, you know what they do? They just sit there and they tear up your furniture and break things. And so we were never going to have any. And then all of a sudden one day we decided, well, maybe that wouldn't be so bad. So we had our kids, we had 2 boys, raised 2 boys. They came, they went, and after that, while they were here, we started camping again, something we had been doing off and on forever, and decided we probably weren't going to move back to my last assignment, which we loved, which was in Idaho. So we lived in Idaho for a while. So we started looking around, and she was from the Twin Cities, and she had always camped up around here. So we did what a lot of people do. We found a piece of property we really liked over by Tofty. We bought it, started making payments. And then as we got older and we got ready for the kids to leave home, you start thinking about things like, when we're older, being close to a hospital might be better. Being able to walk to a grocery store might be preferred. So we shifted, and we had always hung out. I had come up here over at Northern Tier and canoed with, I've been a scout leader. You were scouts too. I did 32 years as a scout leader, still am active. And so anyway, we just began to look around and saw Ely. We liked Ely. We thought, and we saw at that time, this was again about 15 years ago, there were a lot of houses for sale. A lot of them were handyman helpers in desperate need of repair and so forth. In fact, the first weekend we were here, we prowled around and we wanted to see what houses were selling for. Like, we bought this house. I wonder what it's going to be worth someday. So we were prowling around, and like I said, 32 of them we looked at. I don't know if you looked, but the last time we picked up the little magazine here in town and looked around, there were only 5. So we've become a popular place. So I worked for Rockwell Collins. I made a lot of trips, various places around the world, mainland China, right after it opened up back in '88, up through '92. So I was prowling around. My wife, Karen, was a media specialist, a librarian. She worked with the Solon, Iowa, which is where we were originally from, community school system. So she's got a lot of time in that. She's just not feeling up today, so that's why she didn't come. But anyway, she's from down the Twin Cities. So that's where we had the affiliation for the North Country. Things I like to do. We've skied, we're fanatic skiers, at least we have been. What happens to you when you're a fanatical skier is, as you get older, you spend more time drinking and less time skiing. And so that began to happen to us. And it was kind of like, I don't mind paying for the ski lift tickets, but when we're only skiing now 2 or 3 hours a day, it doesn't seem worth the effort. So we went from being the first guys on the gondola and the last people that the ski patrol had to chase off the mountain at night to just kind of, you go up, you ski for a while, have a snack, ski a little bit more, have lunch, ski a little bit more, and said, oh, it's time to start down the mountain. And then you go down to the bar and you sit on the deck and drink beer and watch the other skiers come down. So anyway, we did a lot of that for many decades. And so that was part of the appeal. We've skied over at the Little Giants Ridge now several times. At some point, probably due to insanity, I got and fell in love with sled dogging. I learned how to do it in Nevada. I started doing it for competition in Idaho, and I brought a couple with me to Iowa and got really into it. We ran a sled dog club down there. As you can imagine, in Iowa, most of your races are not in Iowa. They were in Minnesota or Wisconsin or Northern Illinois, someplace. So I got into that until we started having kids. And then it was one of those where I used to run at night. If you run sled dogs, you know, you have to train them. So I ran at night. I had my wheeled carts out on the dirt roads out there, so it'd be easy on their paws. And then you have kids and you come home after a long day and you say, hey, I'm home. I'm going to go ahead and throw the dogs in the box. I'm going to go do some training over at the area. And she said, no, you're not. I have been home with these kids all day. You are staying here and taking over. So that was the end of my sled dogging. So we let them all die of natural death, and then we just went to cats. Much less demanding. Like I said, I've been a scout. I was a scout leader for 32 years down in Iowa for most of that time. We were in Iowa for 45 years. And came up here. I was a little disappointed. Although you have Northern Tier, you no longer have an active Boy Scout troop in town. I had expected to be able to jump into that and help out. So we'll see how that goes in the future. But so because we had come up here always for the 4th of July, and we would watch the parade, and there was always a scout troop in the parade. So we assumed there was an active scout troop, but it turns out there's not anymore. So we'll see how that goes. I do go down there. I am a rifle instructor, NRA instructor, and a scout leader. So I teach rifle shooting at Boy Scout camps during the summer. That's my fun job. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid for any, of course. But anyway, so I will continue to do that in Iowa. So I'll be gone in the summer, going down there to teach rifle. There's nothing better. And the best ones are the ones that can't shoot worth a damn on day one. You know, they hardly know which end point the gun down to. And then by the end of the week, you got them. So they're putting the requirement for scouts is 5 shots in the size of a quarter 5 times. And that's at 50 feet, which for most people is a long handgun range. But you get people, you know, and you figure out they have all these issues and you're sitting there thinking, I cannot figure out, you know, not hitting the paper at all. What is he looking at? And then you find things, you know, first of all, you find the ones who are, you know, and their dominant eye is not what they think it is. So you get those found out, and there's a test you can do to do that. And a couple of them, you sit there and say, wow, have your parents ever talked about glasses? And this is like 4 days in, right? And they look at you and say, oh yeah, well, I wear glasses, but I left them at home. Okay. So anyway, we've had some of those. I've had to bring the target up about 3 feet from them, so we could at least make sure they could get a hole in the paper at 3 feet and then start backing it off and trying to figure out what's going on. Anyway, so that was my #1 hobby down there. I'm a piper. I have been a piper back in '93. I completed my Air Force time, and so I had weekends free. And somebody said, what are you going to do now? I said, I'm going to learn to play the bagpipes. And my wife went, oh. Bottom line is I'm allowed to play at home. In my old place down in Iowa, I had a 400-foot driveway. So as long as I played walking up and down the driveway, that was okay. Now I have this insulated garage. So as long as I practice in the garage, but I don't practice in the house. They're just too loud. But so I've done that for quite a while. Let's see. I guess that's about it. We've been spending most of our spare time getting this house up here prepared and ready to go. And now that we were able to move in, we elected the first thing again was that insulated garage. You know, I got to tell you one story. First time we came up here and it was 35 below 0 air temperature first weekend, right in the middle of the winter, and lost an alternator. And at that time, the place was called Mike's, I think, the Dodge dealer over here. So we took my Silverado in and he changed the alternator. And so I walked back there at 35 below to pick up the car and take it home. And there were 2 older gentlemen in front of me in line to pay for their maintenance. And I thought, I wonder what kind of place this is, because I had seen the signs in the Northwoods grocery store about Wi-Fi cold spot and damn proud of it. And I thought, oh, this might not be the most modern place. So anyway, I'm standing behind these 2 guys and it's 35 below 0. One of them looks at the other and says, boy, thank God for global warming, can you imagine how cold it would be up here if we didn't have that? And I thought, oh my. But anyway, it turns out to be a better place and a more fun place to live than I expected. So we're adjusting and we're having a fairly good time. But anyway, that's about it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
What a delight.
Thanks.
All right. Here, give you that. I'm gonna give you this.
Oh, what a busy life. I got tired listening to all of that. Great job, Tom. All right, next up, Amy Saxton. And a returning. Oh, that's right, your PowerPoint.
Yeah. Thank you.
A returning Elyite. Like everybody knows, I throw a wide net. So, welcome. We got that.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I'm a returning. I'm not technically new. I'm an old Elyite, both former and just old. So, I didn't include a lot of the factoids that other people have shared. So I'll just quickly say that I was born in Ohio. Oh, thank you. And then grew up outside of Chicago. I went to college in Iowa. And, but yeah, I lived in Ely a while ago, and now I'm back. And,
I'm gonna swap mics with you, Amy.
okay.
Maybe a little bit closer.
Okay. Can we hear? Okay. Then, so this is, maybe I'll step over here. So when I first came to Ely, I took an Outward Bound course. And that was in 1988. And this is a picture of that course. And it looks maybe older than it is because it's black and white and it's a little bit of a sepia tone picture. But this is me right here. And with this giant pack. And so, 1988, that's the 1900s. And this photo does look pretty old. This was a semester length course that I took, which is a 12-week course. We spent the first 6 weeks here in Minnesota and then the second 6 weeks in West Texas, which was a course area for Voyager Outward Bound. And so that was how I got connected to Ely. The next spring, I came to work for VOBS and started working there. So from 1988 to 2005, I lived here in Ely. I mostly worked for VOBS, but I also worked at several other places, the typical kind of places where people work when they live here. I worked at Paragus and Wintergreen. I also worked at Hand Done T-shirts. While I was here, I got married. I became a homeowner. I bought different pieces. I lived in different places while I was here, and I had 2 kids. These are my little girls. That's Hazel and that's Jane. They are both born in the Ely Hospital. I don't think we don't do that in that hospital anymore. And then, so a couple of highlights from that time that I was here. I spent 10 years instructing Outward Bound courses, which means I spent somewhere between 700 and 800 days camping in the Boundary Waters. Well, not all in the Boundary Waters, but camping in the Boundary Waters in Texas and Florida, and in just living and working outdoors. And that was a real privilege. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But and then I bought some land on Miners Lake, just west of the Sibley mine, and had that land for a couple years. And I lived there in a 1959 travel trailer, only for a couple years, only one full winter. And it was pretty brutal. No running water, of course, or electricity. So that was rough. Then soon after that, got married, and my husband and I bought a piece of property at the end of the Fernberg, just past the Snowbank Road, way out there. And that property also did not have running water or electricity. And so we lived there for 5 years. And by the end of our time there, we did drill a well. but we would have to use a generator to pump water into a barrel and get our water that way. And we had propane lights throughout the house, and an outhouse. And by the end, we did plumb the house and get electricity. But soon after that, we moved to a house on Old Highway 169. And that's really where we raised our kids. My first daughter was born while we lived in the Fernberg house. But then we moved to this house on Old Highway 169, which is still there. It's now painted kind of a dusty blue color. You can see it from the highway as you drive by. And I want to talk a little bit more about my time here in Ely and some of the things that I remember the most from being here. And one is a memory of going to Britain's right at the very beginning of my time here, and that would have been 1989. And I went and had coffee there with a guy, happened to be a guy, and we had coffee, and the server served me my coffee in a cup and saucer, and served the guy I was with coffee in a mug. And so in 1989, Britain's was still doing that. And I don't know how many of you have been here for long enough to remember that, but that never left me as a memory. I had never seen such a thing. And it was, I just couldn't believe it. It was amazing to me. So that has always stuck with me as a memory from being here in Ely. Another thing that I really learned during those years was, I had come here from, I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago. I didn't have a lot of experience. My time learning about land stewardship and being on the land was from the perspective of working at Outward Bound. But living in Ely, I really learned that there are a lot of different ways to love and steward the land here. And a lot of people use the land and access the land using a motor, like a motorboat, a motorized vehicle, like an ATV or a snowmobile, a snow machine, as they say. But that is not how everybody uses their land.
I don't know what happened.
Oh, okay. Oh, much better. Okay. And so now I'm yelling into this. Okay. But it really helped me understand that there are a lot of ways to steward and love the land. And that broadened my mind in a permanent way, because once you open your mind about something, it's really hard to close it back down. So that was one thing that I learned from my time in Ely. Another thing that happened here was, I got to live in a small town. I lived here for 16 years, and you get to know people. I knew Len at the post office and Charlie Merhar and Ace Hardware, and the Pomida ladies kind of knew me and would chat me up a little bit. Now, I could never really crack the nut of the Zups ladies, though. They would not talk to me, or at least admit that they recognized me. But who knows, So, but I really valued that and missed that always as I lived in other places. Then the other thing I want to talk about is something I learned going to the Crazy Rabbit. When I lived at Miners Lake, I would often come home from work and turn it home to my little trailer and turn my heater on, which I didn't leave on during the day in the wintertime. And then I would head to the bar to wait for my house to warm up. And that's why. That's the only reason. But so I got to know a lot of people who were regulars at that bar and who spent a lot of their time at that bar. And that opened my mind also, because I saw families that were talking to their kids, where their 6th grade kid would come into the bar to talk to their mom and dad who were there drinking, And while part of my brain might be like, blah, 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 what are you doing? They were parenting their kid is what they were doing. Were they doing it from a bar stool? Yes. But how different is that than doing it at a cocktail party or while you're drinking anywhere else, And what it taught me is that everything is relative, and it's always about the context. And these were families that were taking care of their kids. They were doing what they were doing. It was just in a different context. And that was something that I learned at the Crazy Rabbit, believe it or not. So that is these are just some of the things that I took away from my time in Ely. So in 2005, I was the marketing director for the Voyager Outward Bound School here. And I'd been working in that role for about 5 years, but that job ended when the Outward Bound School reorganized. So I decided to take a new job with Outward Bound, which required relocating to Colorado. So I left Ely in 2005 for this job and moved to Colorado, where I spent the next 20 years. And during that time, my kids grew up, they graduated from high school and college and grew into themselves. And I had 2 jobs of note that are worth mentioning. So this will be a very compressed description of the 20 years I spent in Colorado. So I was the director of admissions for Outward Bound, the national director of admissions. So I was in charge of all of the Outward Bound programs in the country, taking enrollment and managing the courses, planning the schedules, and doing all of that for Outward Bound nationally. And did that for about 6 years until my position was eliminated in 2011. And then I eventually I did a bunch of different things for a little, I was a little underemployed for a while. And then by 2017 or so, I ended up eventually making my way into local government and worked for a county in Colorado where my title was Strategic and Community Planning Director, and I was supervising the Planning and Zoning Department, the Building Department, the Housing Department, public lands, and the animal shelter. I was also actually representing the county on issues related to the interstate that ran through the county. It was a very small county, but I had a lot of responsibility. There were only 9,500 people in the county. And then for a few years in there, I started making and to some extent selling artwork. So these are some of the pieces that I have made. And this is work that is in cut paper. So this is cut paper glued onto plywood. And I do hope to start making more artwork and maybe selling it again in the future. And that's one of the reasons I came back to Ely, was hopefully to have more time to engage in art making. I do have a website, so you can see more of my work at amysaxton.com if you're interested. So a little bit about what brought me back to Ely. In 2024, my youngest daughter was going to be graduating from college the next spring. And I returned to Ely for the first time in 19 years. I attended the 60th anniversary celebration at Voyager Outward Bound School. And I had not been back in all that time. And, in my 20 years in Colorado, I lived in different places and had some different jobs. And what I found was that I was a part of the communities I lived in. And especially when I was working for the county, I was responsible for the communities that I lived in, but I didn't have community. And when I came back and got to meet and reconnect with all the people I still knew here in town who had worked with me at Outward Bound and had been here for all of had stayed here and raised their kids here for all of those years, what I felt here was a sense of belonging. And it's going to make me cry. You can't eat that, So then in November of 2024, early November, around the first Tuesday of November, I decided to move back to Ely. Shortly after that, I gave notice at work. In May of 2025, I closed on a house here in town. And in late July, I packed up and headed back here to Ely. So my plan was to semi-retire and make art. But things did not go exactly as planned. I soon ended up in a job. It was not what I was expecting. My neighbor and friend, Sue Ellen Sack, who works at the college here in town and is a former Outward Bound person, was helping me do some construction work in my kitchen. And she's on the board of Wellbeing Development. And she said, hey, Wellbeing Development needs an executive director. It's a half-time role. Are you interested? And I said, sure. So I am now the executive director at Wellbeing Development. And I want to just talk a little bit about that organization. How many people are familiar with Wellbeing Development? Yay, good. So Wellbeing Development has 3 programs: the Northern Lights House, the Recovery Residences, and Care Facilitation. Northern Lights Clubhouse is a program where people can come and find connection and community and support. It runs 3 days a week and allows anybody to come and live and operate and find friendship and connection and help prepare a meal and help with other activities and work together and do some meaningful things together. The Recovery Residences provide stable, sober housing for people in the last stages of recovery when they are working to transition back to society at the end of their recovery journey and need a place to live so that this is a low income or free housing for people so they can make their way back into society without having undue barriers and challenges. And care facilitation, we have a certified community health worker who is available for people who are living in the recovery residence or who are participating in Clubhouse, so they have extra access to resources. And the care facilitation services are available to anybody as well. But ultimately, what Wellbeing Development is doing is elevating community well-being as a whole. These 3 programs work together, and the Clubhouse is really making sure that community and connection are available to this community. The recovery residents are providing stable, sober housing, which is a key element of a community that is living in well-being. And care facilitation provides help accessing public resources for people. These are all key elements of providing well-being. And ultimately, Wellbeing Development lets people know that the community is there for them. And that is something I feel very happy to be a part of. So in closing, I just want to talk about a couple of the things that I really gained over the years, and especially in the decade that I was an instructor for Outward Bound. I've been incredibly lucky to have had almost every moment of the life of my job life, of my work life, of the time I've spent exchanging labor for money, been in things that have meaning behind them, things that I'm very proud of doing, things that I feel lucky to be doing, that I'm involved with. And that is a real gift that I've had across many decades of my life. So that's one huge gift. And the other is for the decade that I spent working for Outward Bound. And this one takes a little tiny bit longer to talk about. But for those hundreds and hundreds of days that I got to spend living and working outdoors on the land and under the sky, something happens when you're in that environment. I mean, we all know this. When you spend time walking in the woods or walking by the lake or doing anything outdoors, you just feel a little bit better after you've done that. You feel a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser, a little bit clearer headed. And so I was so lucky because I got to spend hundreds and hundreds of days, not just for a couple of hours, but for 24 hours, day after day, under the sky and on the ground, living, sleeping, walking, in direct contact with the surface of the earth, under what the weather, whatever it handed out, day after day. And that is a very powerful thing. And I also got to do that while in the presence of an Outward Bound course. And that means I was doing that while a group of people We're transforming from strangers into a high-functioning team. And because every group of Outward Bound students transforms from strangers to a high-functioning team, every single one. And on that team, every person on that team discovers that they are stronger than they knew. They discover untapped strength. And that is an endless, endless reservoir that we all have inside us. Because every bit of strength you discover, every time you discover what you think are the limits of your strength, you can discover more. There's more. And once you discover your new strength, you can't undiscover it. You can't shrink that back. You can't put that away. So I got to have this magical experience for 10 years of my life. And that has impacted everything that I've done ever since. And that is all about being here in Ely. So I'm so grateful for my time here. And really, it means that Ely is a magical place. And it's partly because of the story that I just told you, and it's partly because of everything right out there that we are surrounded by. So I'm so grateful to have been able to share some time with you today, and thank you for letting me be here today. Thank you very much.